some NL East baseball here, Jake Hasan. Here is the question I want to start with. Going into this season, the Atlanta Braves are the favorite at plus 140 to win the NL East. The Phillies are plus 185, 2-1 for the Mets. The Nats are 100-1. The Marlins are 200-1 because the Marlins hate themselves and repeatedly slam the door on their own groin offseason after offseason. I'd laugh at it if I didn't feel so bad for the 17 remaining Miami Marlins fans. Put that to bed. This, to me, fair or not, Jake Hasan, I'm not even counting the Mets here. I love Juan Soto. I had a ticket on Juan Soto to win the AL MVP last year. I'll have a ticket on Juan Soto to win the NL MVP this year for the New York Mets. I think Juan Soto is going to be Juan Soto. And it's like the Mets decided to grab Juan Soto and go, that's enough. That's going to cover our bases. They re-signed Pete Alonso, and that's fantastic. But they decided that that was enough to elevate this club back up to the top of the NL East. I don't think it was, Jake Hasan. To me, it is either Bravos at plus 140 or Phillies at plus 185 to do it again. Am I nuts for DQing the Mets before the season even starts?
I don't think you're nuts for that because I also don't view this team in a positive light. I agree with you completely, and I think we talked about it, you and I, on Bet for the Cycle a couple Saturdays ago, that the Mets were just disappointing in that you felt like there was more coming. After they signed Juan Soto to that massive deal, you and I talked about, Steve Cohen's not the type of guy to just sit back and say, all right, we're good, we're done. The guy has money coming out of his eyeballs, so God knows he knows how to spend it, hence the Juan Soto mega deal. And then he just didn't. And Corbin Burns was still on the market at the time. There were a bunch of other pitchers that were Nick Pivetta was still on the market and has been for the last couple of weeks before the Padres scooped him up. And the Mets just kind of said, all right, we got Juan Soto, we're done. And to a certain point, I do kind of get it because you made a run in the playoffs, you made a run in the second half of the season, and then you added on to that still, and you bring back most of the same team. But you still needed to do more to get over the hump. They're not a true World Series contender to me because there are other well-rounded teams out there that just maybe they don't have the same star power as the Mets, but they're a better, well-rounded team. And that was kind of the reason, and that was the reason I didn't love the Yankees in the World Series against the Dodgers, because the Yankees were counting on Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and Garrett Cole. 3 guys to take you to the promised land. Whereas the Dodgers had a full team of guys, 1 through 9, and the rotation was pieced together, and you needed Walker Buehler to look like the Walker Buehler of old, but they were more well-rounded. They were more complete, and all of the Yankees fans in my mentions all October, we're going to prove you wrong. See, we're in the World Series now, and then they just lost immediately. So I think the Mets are going to run into that same problem where they're going to have Frankie Lindor. Awesome. They're going to have Pete Alonso. Awesome. Pair it with Juan Soto. Great. You're going to score 1 million runs. I'm going to use the same quote that I used with the Yankees. You're going to score 1 million runs. How are you going to stop someone else from scoring 1,000,001 and you just lose in the big moment? That's my problem with the Mets. I agree with you. I think that's the Braves and the Phillies. Again, I do think that the Nationals are kind of plucky. I don't think they'll win the division per se, but I think they're a team that could win 83, 84 games and play spoiler. But as far as the division goes, it's Braves, and I think it's the Phillies. Like, I put the Phillies 1 with a bullet.
I don't disagree with quite literally anything you just said. I feel that exact way about the Mets. I feel that way about the Nationals. I don't think the Nationals are winning the division. I do think this could be a division that one of those two that we do consider division winners, the Phillies or the Braves, could get to the end of the year, could be a half game or a game back that cost them the East, and then look back at a weekend series where they got swept by the Nats 3-0 and go, all we had to do was grab one of those, like just one of those, but we got swept in DC. And that could end up being what changes the face of this division. Last year, Jake Hasan, going into the year, was the first time that I have a rule. I am an Atlanta Braves fan because I grew up in the South. Everybody who lives in the South was an Atlanta Braves fan. Thank you, Turner Sports. Last year was a year that I humiliated myself, Jake Hasan, because I broke one of my own rules. One of my own rules is don't bet on your own team. Anything. Don't bet players. Don't bet props. Don't bet futures. Don't bet games. Don't bet innings. Don't bet nerfies. Don't bet no hitters. Don't bet anything. because your heart is dumb and also stronger than your head. I do not care who the hell you think you are, okay? It's just your heart's dumb. We all know the high school sweetheart we're still lamenting the loss of. Your heart's stupid. Never listen to it, okay? I went all in on the Atlanta Braves last year. I went all in them on win total. I went all in on them to get another World Series. I went all in on them to win the National League. I went all in on Spencer Strider for a Cy Young, on Max Fried for a Cy Young. I went in for Ronnie Acuna Jr. to repeat as the NL MVP. I went all in, and none of those things happened. But because I'm a gambler and we justify everything, Jake Hasan, I have leaned back in on the Braves are actually a pretty good team. That's still a 90-win baseball team, a 90-plus win baseball team, despite losing Strider for the year, despite losing Fried for stretches, despite losing Acuna Jr. for the year, despite basically everybody in the 1 through 9 not named Matt Olson hitting the IR for like 2+ months in that season. The Braves were still very much a threat in that division down to like the last 2.5 weeks of the regular season. I wasn't wrong. I just got kicked in the nards by the injury bug last year. And while I don't know that I'm going to go all in again with a tick over a month, actually 1 month and 1 day from the Dodgers and the Cubs doing opening day in Tokyo, which we'll talk about later on in the show, Rob, I also think that there's a lot of people, and the Braves getting plus money is kind of one of these things that I chalk up as evidence of this, Jake Hasan. I think there's a lot of people who look at simply the result for the Atlanta Braves last year and not the reason for the result, and are writing this team off before the year starts. And I would caution them, which is why I think you're getting a plus money, almost money and a half bet for them to win a division that they won 7 consecutive years going into last year when they had the worst rash of injuries in sports history. If you're writing off the Bravos as a value, and I'm talking for the East, I'm talking as what are they, like 8-1 to win the NL right now? That's flyer money as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, context matters, especially Major League Baseball. If you're just parachuting in, looking at the results or looking at whatever the math or the algorithm tells you about this season, context matters a lot. And there was no, and to your point, yeah, I'm the same. I don't bet on my teams. I don't do the emotion because I don't bet things that I'm already emotionally invested in. And so there was no way, to your credit though, Rob, that you had no way of knowing that Ronald Acuna's knee was going to explode. You had no way of knowing that Spencer Strider's elbow was going to fall off before the season even started. You had no idea that Ozzie Albies' foot was going to split in two. So I think you're right. I think this is a good team. I think there are concerns with this team as far as the rotation goes. You got to see it. Like, if you're going to give Ian Anderson 30 starts, then you're going to have a real problem. But the Braves seemingly found something in Reynaldo Lopez. I think he's going to be a very, very good pitcher. We know what Strider is when he's back, and he's doing all of the starts and all of the prep in spring training, so he'll probably be back sooner rather than later, even though they're playing it very close to the chest right now. So I think the Braves, for me, if I'm going to bet anything with them, I'm going to wait, because there's a chance that it takes a little bit for this to gel without Acuna and Strider, and then once those guys come back, then it's kablamo time. And then it's foot on the gas. This team shows you what they have been for the past 5 years, if not more. And I really Schwellenbach. Who's that? I've never even heard of that. X, can't talk about Bryce Elder. Oh, he's not that good. I've seen his name on Twitter a couple times. X through it. Whereas the thing is, the Braves just churn these guys out who are very serviceable, and then once Strider and Lopez should be full strength now, they've had a full season as a starter under his belt. Then once Strider's back, you have 2 legitimate guys. And by the way, don't forget, Chris Sale, the guy who just won the Cy Young, is still there. So once Strider's back, you have 3 legitimate horses at the top of your rotation. Who cares what Schwellenbach's doing at the 4? Who cares what Ian Anderson's doing in the 5th role? You have 3 legitimate guys in a lineup that absolutely mashes. I think we're underrating the Braves.